Good morning.
Good morning, sir.
So let us resume the discussion. So before I start, we will very briefly review what we have discussed in the last class. Okay. So let us quickly review what we have studied, seen in the last class and resume back to the discussion. So in this lecture, I will introduce, I will give an overview of deep learning theory and applications course, what all we discuss in little more details. And then I will discuss on some of the aspects, especially the mathematics basics for this course. So I will refer to the existing video lectures on machine learning for image processing course, and will not give a very complete overview of mathematics basics required. I will only be giving few very important, touching upon few important aspects of the basics that are required. What we will do is, I will refer to the class notes and the video lectures we had earlier, and you can refer them and come back either probably on this Friday itself or on Monday. We will have a quiz on mathematics basics. Because the mathematics basics are very important, even though whether I discuss fully here or not, even for this course. Since I have already discussed in the last course, that is machine learning for image processing, I think it is necessary to spend the whole on discussing the same again. So what I suggest is, whenever you are answering, it is better if you can just switch on your cameras if there are no bandwidth issues and answer it, so that it will be more lively. And those who have no bandwidth issues can also on their cameras, so that the class looks like a class. Okay, so I'm resuming with the discussion that we had in the last class. So what did we discuss in the last class? Any quick points? A couple of quick summary points from the last class. Yeah, some quick answers are welcome.
Sir, good morning, sir.
Yeah, good morning.
If image is given, what kind of steps we need to make so that we can classify it? So like pre-processing, feature extraction, and so those kind of things we have discussed in the last class.
Very good. So we have discussed, if an image is given, automatically if you want to do classification task, if you want to automate the classification task, what all are needed for it? So we have seen that pre-processing is needed, feature extraction is needed, and then classification is needed. Very good. Good. So any other inputs? So I need at least a couple of few other points quickly on the summary of last class. Any other students?
We have discussed about the difference between machine learning and deep learning, where in deep learning, the feature extraction and classification are combined, whereas in classical machine learning, it is pre-processing and feature extraction are domain specific.
Right, very good. So in general, feature extraction and pre-processing are domain specific. However, in deep learning, we directly take the data and we can combine feature extraction and classification through the learning. So in fact, so across different domains, we can make the same learning algorithm to learn the features. Okay, that's the greatness or elegance of deep learning. Fine, very good. So what else? So any other points that we have discussed? At least one or two more points. Yeah, quick answers are welcome from any other students.
We discussed about PCA and HOG.
Okay, we have discussed little more details about principal component analysis mainly. Okay, and then HOG we just mentioned. Very good. Okay, so what did we discuss about PCA? A quick summary.
So identifying the principal axis, because those principal axes are orthogonal to each other.
Right.
So
Identifying the principal axis of what? Same
of given
of given
image,
given image
given
or
object.
given object in the image. Okay, or the four.
Yes, yes.
In other words, whatever is the foreground object in an image. For that, we identify dominant direction. So if we see the image that you are seeing now, this image, okay, the dominant direction will be like this, like that. Okay, if we see only the chair, dominant direction will be like this. Okay, so that's what we can extract just by considering all foreground pixels as the sample points. Okay, in principal component analysis and decomposing them to get the major principal direction of the data sample points. Okay, fine, very good. So any other things that we have discussed in the last class? Any other quick point from some of the girls? No other points we discussed in the last class? Okay, so we also discussed about in general what the deep learning methods that we discuss, convolution neural networks to generative adversarial networks, and we also discussed very briefly on the some applications, okay, where we can use these kind of deep learning methods. We will elaborate little more on the applications in this class, and we will give more details on what the techniques that we discuss in this course. Okay, so as I mentioned again, this is not a broad course and this is a little more specialized course. So those who have good interest in deep learning and computer vision in general will greatly benefit, and it needs good programming skills and then mathematical background either already with you or to develop. Okay, so if you are keen on that, then I think it is good place where you are. So otherwise you can just have a rethought about the elective or whatever the course you are taking. Okay, so let us now continue our discussion. So what is we have discussed about principal component analysis. Other features that people widely use are histogram of orientation gradients. So what did I discuss about histogram of orientation gradients? Any quick answer? We have mentioned very briefly about histogram of orientation gradients.
The future versus counts, a graph between a future versus counts.
Okay, can you elaborate a little more?
Suppose we have two classifiers, we need to classify two objects. There, the count of each classifier versus the future. Suppose
that is simple histogram. Count of each classifier versus feature means if you just plot the features and then just how many samples taking a feature value if you count, then it is just the histogram of feature. Okay, so R P of X. For that feature, you are plotting the like the class densities or the say feature densities. So if you consider P of X given omega 1, only for that class if you plot, it is class conditional density of feature X. Okay, P of X given omega 1. Okay, those who might have studied or who might have listened to machine learning video lectures will be clear on this. So what I suggest is those who are not clear on this also to familiarize themselves on the class frequencies and how to interpret them as probabilities. Okay, because that's in some sense gives a good intuition on the features. Okay, other than that, what did we discuss on the histogram of orientation gradients? And expecting a quick answer? So what did we discuss on histogram of gradients? Nothing else we discussed on histogram of orientation gradients? Yeah, those who have taken machine learning course should be able to tell something, at least. Yeah, Bhavana, you want to tell something?
It is used for getting the orientation of the gradients in the image,
Okay,
like the
Okay.
shape.
right. So it essentially finds the orientation of gradients of edges. Gradients means edges in an image, and hence it gives the shape information of the objects, right? Okay, that's what histogram of orientation gradients are. So what I suggest is these are, even though we don't directly use them, okay, for the benefit of those who have not taken the last class, I would refer to some of the video lectures. Okay, at the end, I would recommend them to go through them because I think they're very important. I am surprised to see this much waiting for the answer of histogram of orientation gradients. Okay, after many of you have taken the machine learning for image processing course. So I suggest or request you to quickly answer so that we can move on, as I mentioned in the last class. Okay, fine. So then the examples for classification methods are neural networks, Bayesian classification, and support vector machine. These are given here, but there are several other classification methods. I hope many of you are familiar with Bayesian classification, which is a statistical or probabilistic classifier. Okay, and neural network is what kind of classifier? It is a discriminant function based classifier which directly gives the decision boundaries. Okay, so what essentially it is needed is, see, if you have samples, say if I want to classify cars or bikes from a given image, assume that that's my problem. Okay, so in this image I took only 2 pixels. Fine. From these 2 pixels are the intensities at these 2 locations in a given image. See, this may be say 20, 20, and this may be say 100, 120. Assume that. Okay, I am just looking at the intensity I of 20, 20, I of 120, 100, 120. I am just taking 2 pixels. Okay, intensity at pixel 1 and intensity at pixel 2. I am just putting a graph. Okay, for class 1 samples and class 2 samples together. Okay, I am trying to see that will this graph of the intensities at 2 pixels enable me to separate class 1 samples, that is bikes, from the cars. Okay, assume that class 2 is cars. So that is the problem I am trying to figure out. So are you understanding what I am trying to do? So if this pixel intensity, say whatever is here, is this pixel intensity is say 50, then this is pixel 1 is 50. Okay, this value is 50. Then if this pixel intensity is 200, then this value is 200. Fine. So I will put the sample, okay, based on pixel 1 and pixel 2, this whole image I will represent as a one sample at 50, 200. Okay, that's how I represent samples in feature space. Fine. Here I am considering only 2 features. Features here are what? What are the features I am considering here? Can I have a quick answer? For performing classification of these bikes and cars, what are the features I am considering?
Pixel at 2 different points in the image, sir.
What is that? Intensities at 2 different points. Okay.
Yes, sir. Yes.
Those are 2 features. Fine. Feature 1, feature 2. So intensity here is 50. Here is 200, and hence this sample is here. For other car sample, say the like 150, and this may be say 150 again. So then the sample is here. You got the point? How I am placing the samples in this feature space? Is this clear or not? See, once we go to deep neural networks, the data is very huge. The features are very large. Okay, and then imagining in higher dimensional information is almost difficult or impossible. Okay, so whatever we want to understand about the feature space, okay, representing the samples in feature space, and few other things, especially on the representation front, we have to do in a smaller scale. Okay, and we should be clear on them to understand the further things. Fine. So is this clear or not? So what now in from this, if I give this a plot to you and ask you how many bikes are there in this, okay, in this data set I have considered here. Can one of you answer? How many bikes are there in this? No?
6 bikes.
No? How many bikes?
6 bikes.
6 bikes. Very good. So because each bike is represented as just one sample point plus each plus is a bike. Because this bike, how do I represent? Just I am looking at 2 pixel intensities and saying that these x1, x2 are features. I am representing in that feature space x1, x2. Okay. So now how many, next question, I suggest to answer by some other student. Okay. So it is better all of you participate so that you can understand better. So how many cars are there in this example? How many cars are here?
7.
7 cars. Oh, yeah, as you can see the count of minus. Okay. So this is non-motorbikes they have written. So any other than my motorbikes. Fine. So now the question is, see, instead of 2 pixels, I consider intensities at 3 pixels as 3 features describing an image or sample and then represent the same set of samples. What is the dimension of feature space?
3.
So the dimension of feature space will be 3. Okay, so I will be representing in, okay, if it is Cartesian coordinate system, okay, there will be x1, x2 and x3. Okay, so 3 axes. Now the next question is, see, let this be 300 cross 400 images. Okay, so in that case, if I want to consider each pixel intensity as a feature value, okay, what is the dimension of feature space? What is the dimension of feature space?
120.
12 into
12 into 10 power 4.
right, 12 into 10 power 4. Okay, that is the dimension in which I am representing my samples. Okay, so now assume that I have 1 lakh samples. Okay, so this is not impractical now. Okay, we have data with 14 million samples. Okay, so I assume that I have 1 lakh samples. Fine, and the feature space is so probably 2. Then what happens? There are only 2 features I'm taking and 1 lakh samples. Do you think that they see, it is very likely that they may not be linearly separable? Do you agree with me or not? See, what do I mean by linearly separable? See, are these samples of motorbikes and non-motorbikes, considering the intensities at these 2 locations as features, are these linearly separable samples?
No, sir.
So the reason is you can't draw a linear line or a straight line separating the sample points of bikes and non-bikes. Okay, so if you can draw a separating line, okay, that is referred to as linearly separable samples. Class 1, class 2 samples, if you can separate them by a linear line, then they are linearly separable samples. Fine. Do you understand what we are trying to discuss? Now, if I say that they are not linearly separable, but they can be separated by a non-linear decision boundary, okay, or non-linear line or non-linear curve. Okay, so then what do I mean? The samples of class 1 and class 2 are separable, but not linearly separable. Do you got the point or not? Is this clear? Are these are these separable at all? Class 1 and class 2 samples here?
No.
No, these are not separable at all. What about here in this?
Linearly
separable. They are
They are
separable.
linearly separable, in fact. Okay, so if there are some samples around here also, then they are not linearly separable. Still, they may be separable. Fine. So this is the this is in 2 dimensions, and if you have 1 lakh samples, do you think that they may be linearly separable? It is very difficult to make such large data linearly separable unless the features are very distinct. Is it not? So if I see the features between a person and a cat, okay, then I see the heights. Okay, then also you can see that very small kids may have a height equal to a cat, for example. Then again, they may form into the same cluster. So find when you make a real situation, it is very unlikely that with a couple of features, 1 or 2 features, you can make the samples linearly separable. Is this clear or not? Is this clear?
Yes, sir.
Now the question is, if that is the case, see, why should we unnecessarily constrain to 2 features? We can have all the features of this image that is 300 cross 400. Okay. And then in that 12 into 10 power 4, that is 1,20,000 space. Okay. The samples may be separable, right? Do you think they may be separable or not? The 2 class samples. In this one, if you increase the dimension of features or if you increase the number of features, do you think that the separability, the provision for separability, will that increase or not?
It should increase.
It should increase or it usually increases. Okay. So most of the times it increases. Fine. So now the question is, okay, now the question is, why don't we increase then have all the features, 1,20,000 features? What is the issue with that?
Extra computation.
Huh?
Computationally, it's very high, sir.
Yeah, one aspect is computationally it is very intensive. Okay, if you have those many features, if you want to develop an algorithm on the top of it, it is very difficult. Fine. Any other aspects?
Many features might be like non-relevant.
What is that?
Many features might be non-relevant. Like, I mean, like if let's say we,
Okay, some of the features may be non-relevant. Okay, fine. For example, can you just tell, because we go into the abstract level later, so can you tell which features may be non-relevant here? If I just
let's say
image, which features
like
may
the background of the image, maybe.
Hmm?
Like it might be same, like the background of image might be same for bike also as well as car also. Background.
Very good. So background itself may have actually, okay, out of this 1,20,000, at least there may be 20,000 pixels in the background. They're all not very informative. So having all features is not really an advantageous. Okay, it may include features which doesn't really may give any information. Okay, selecting the features makes an important. Fine. Are there any other limitations? If I consider, say, even in spite of that, I don't bother. If they are separable, fine for me. In 1,20,000. So even if there are some features which are not useful, I don't care. So then still, is there any other limitation?
Maybe overlapping.
What is overlapping?
Like if we consider height and width, if for a particular box, both the height and width can determine the same aspect, then considering
Okay.
both might actually.
Right. But actually what happens is when you plot in higher dimensions, see, length may overlap, width may overlap. But when you plot in higher dimensions, there is a separating line, okay, or separating plane. So if they overlap in higher dimensions, it is unlikely that like in lower dimensions, you need to look at little more carefully, but it is more likely that they won't overlap in higher dimensions. When you look at with more features, it is likely that you can you can decrease the overlap of these samples or features. They won't be overlap. For visualization, they will be overlap. Okay, but in 3 dimensions, okay, you can plot some curve or line which will not, which can separate the class 1 and class 2 samples. Correct or not?
Yes, sir. Then
Yeah.
maybe while classifying, we can get a problem like.
So more important problem is, how do we visualize? See, now 2-dimensional space itself is okay, somewhat it is fine for us. 3 dimensions, if we go, there itself we can't visualize very well. In say 1,20,000 dimensions, what happens to the data? Or if we make some changes to the algorithm, what is that implying there? How do we understand? Okay, that is very difficult. Okay, interpreting it, visualizing it, and even addressing any of the challenges there in that dimensional data is very difficult. However, there are methods which does very well with the higher dimensional data, which does very well in projecting the data to the lower dimension and doing it better here. Okay, and tackling the higher dimensional decision boundaries from lower dimensional analysis. Fine, you got the point. So there are some methods, especially referred to as kernel-based methods, support vector-based methods. What they do is they all our mathematics and algorithmic understanding or whatever we develop is in lower dimensions. Okay, just in 2 dimensions maybe. Okay, but it can affect the decision boundaries in higher dimensions, 10 power 4 dimensions. Okay, so in such a way, there are some methods to do that, to analyze the, to develop classifiers. But however, in all these aspects, what we need to focus is, see, we have seen that these samples, if you see, they are linearly separable. Okay, and it is easy to separate. What do you think is difference between this and this plot? The information is here, right? So can some of you tell what is the major difference between this and this? Okay, when we samples.
Feature, sir. What kind of feature we have taken?
Right. So what kind of features are we looking at? So as we said, domain specific features always are plus to separate them. So now the deep learning, what it does is it doesn't really look at feature engineering. Okay, so in that sense, it doesn't try to understand or develop the methods looking at the domain knowledge and the features of which features are good for the analysis. Okay, there are some methods which also learn the features. Okay, but it doesn't really bring in domain knowledge to a greater extent. However, it has an elegance to learn the features and do the classification. So what you can understand is there is still a gap between the conventional way of feature extraction and classification that does has an elegance. Especially conventional way of feature extraction is heavily relied on signal processing, image processing, and computer vision areas. Understanding the signals, understanding the data, and analyzing the data, and using the domain knowledge, all those aspects were there. Okay, but however, in spite of all these things, the classification, when you bring into one like multi-dimensional data to a single dimension, okay, many things are lost. Spatial neighborhood is lost. Okay, that means, say for example, so if I want to analyze this in image, so if I just put 2 pixels as 2 different entities, okay, to a neural network, then what happens? A completely different understanding we will get. If you look at it as an image, different understanding, spatial information also makes a sense. Okay, so that we will discuss a little more later. But there are limitations. However, there are some elegances. But however, the deep learning methods, the abilities of deep learning methods overtake very heavily on the limitations that they have. Okay, so that is why the learning of features and doing classification with machine learning, deep learning and convolutional networks is very famous and it works very well. Okay, so now going little further, these are the direction of gradients as I was discussing before. This is given by histogram of orientation gradients. So what it does, first find out so what I suggest is as a primitive example, even though we don't deal really with computer vision or image processing, those who are taking the course, if they are not familiar with little bit of finding how to find edges in an image, okay, and how to find angle of edges in an image, how to extract some small features like histogram of orientation gradients, and how to apply PCA, okay, I would encourage them well to get familiar with those things. Okay, because even though they doesn't require as such for your subsequent developments, but having that will give you good understanding of what you are analyzing later. Okay, so those who are familiar, it is fine. Otherwise, you can refer to machine learning video lectures and few of the assignments also we can provide to familiarize yourself on that. So this gives a nice information like this. As you can see, angle of edges will give a nice information of shape of the object. Okay, but whereas this information, when you give it to a neural network, what happens? This is again brought to one dimension. Okay, you see that this is a feature vector. Finally, we bring it to one dimension. Then the elegance of this information is lost. That's what is the limitation with the conventional classifiers like neural networks or support vector machine or anything. However, convolution neural networks can directly take the two-dimensional data, or you can put a channel of this histogram of orientation gradients with spatial information. Okay, that means you can put the angle as it is here at this location, and gradient angle at this location, all gradient angles at respective locations. And you put this as one channel, this as one channel, two channels, and give it. Okay, so, and still it learns good information. So you need to see how to give the data and so on, but you can provide what I'm trying to convey is the spatial information need not be brought to one dimension, and then it need not be compromised in convolution neural networks. Hope this is clear. Fine, fine. So here you can see that this is head detection. Okay, so the conventional methods like face detection can also be extended to many other applications. Okay, like head detection, object detection, and so on. But the way we extend conventionally is different, and the deep learning methods, how they extend is different. Deep learning methods are more driven by data, and but with same architecture, but conventional methods try to extend different features in different applications. Okay, for head detection, you need different feature extraction, and for face detection, different feature extraction, and so on. Okay. So just to give a background on computer vision. Okay. So because what we are applying this deep learning is mainly on the computer vision area, it is better to know what are the tasks in computer vision and image processing. Okay, where we apply this deep learning. Okay. So usually processing an image and the input being an image and output also being an image is referred to image processing or low level vision. Okay, that means we just want to understand, improve the vision of the image, or enhance the quality of the image. That is image processing. Input is an image and output is an image. Okay, whereas the mid-level vision and high-level vision, which is referred to as computer vision, what it does is, see, if I just separate different objects in the image or give different labels to different regions of the objects in the image, that is referred to as segmentation or semantic segmentation. Okay, those who are not very well aware can know. Those who are aware, it is already fine. Okay, separating each pixel, I want to give a label here. Unlike whole the image classifying to tiger, what I want to do here, I want to say that this is road, this is grass, this is sky, okay, and this is water, and this is tiger. Okay, so that kind of separating, even though if I give a label or not, just separating is segmentation, and then separating and giving label is semantic segmentation. I am trying to give semantics also to this segmentation, what I have done. Okay, so I want to say that this is the land. I want to characterize which region is what. Okay, so this is essentially will help us in understanding the scene or understanding the image we look at. Hope this is clear. Okay, so you are free to stop me, because once it is now in this lecture, I will be discussing on some of the areas and applications, okay, which will form as backdrop for the theoretical developments, okay, that we discuss subsequently. Fine. When I move on to the theoretical developments, it may look completely independent than this, but on the background, this is the kind of task we need to perform. Okay, fine. So here, what is this example? Can one of you guess? What do you think is this example showing?
Face detection.
Yes. Yeah, please tell.
Face detection, sir.
Huh?
Face detection.
Okay, is that only face detection or something else is also there in this?
Panoramic.
Answer. Any other thing that's there in this? Any other computer vision task that is also there in this?
Panoramic image.
So it is panoramic image or it is stitching. Okay, so it is referred to as either image stitching or image mosaicing. Okay, so or panoramic view. So fine. So one is taking pictures like this, one snap here, one snap here, one snap here, and they're mosaicing it and then detecting the faces. Okay, fine. Okay, so here are different kind of tasks in computer vision which are of interest. We will discuss more in applications. We will, once we discuss the theory of deep neural networks, we will discuss how do we use them for these different applications. As I said, this is semantic segmentation. So unlike the giving the whole label to the image, whole image, we try to give label for each pixel. Okay. Here it is object detection. We want to not just tell what the object is, but also want to localize where the object is. Okay. So this is classification plus localization. That means XY, from here it starts, and this is the height and this is the width of the object. Okay, something like that. XY, HW is what we want to give for localizing the objects. Fine. And now there are different ways of localizing the object. Even with center, they localize. Okay, and so on. Now, this is not just single object detection. This is multiple object detection. We may have several objects. Like here only cats are shown, but sofa, pillow, all can be different objects. Tree. Okay. So this is object detection. Several objects we want to detect. For each object, we want to give X, Y, W. And this is referred to as instance segmentation. Okay. So can one of you quickly tell from observation, what is the difference between semantic segmentation and instance segmentation? Yeah, a quick answer is welcome. And the students who are not speaking out are more welcome to speak out.
Sir, we are not detecting the type of object in semantic segmentation.
Okay. Instance segmentation.
In instance segmentation, we know that this part of the photo is this object.
Fine. Okay. Any other? I would like some adding information to that.
Semantic segmentation seems to segment the entire image, whereas instant segmentation, we are looking at only objects of interest.
Okay, fine. Any other still adding further?
And also we can differentiate the different instance of the same object. Like
very good. We can differentiate different instances of the same object. Okay, all are cats only. Okay, all are dogs only here. Assume that. Okay, but this is different dog, this is different dog, this is different dog. Okay, so like that we are differentiating. Fine. So that can be done in instance segmentation. Here dog, dog, cat. But anyway, different instances of even same class also we can do it. Separate it. Right. So, and see, given these things, you can do many things. Okay, in computer vision especially. Say if you have a big video or an image, you want to search where this object is. This is a query block. I want to search where it is in a video. Okay, then what I do? I may go frame by frame and search where this object is. How do I search this object in the image? So can one of you tell quickly some way of searching it? Given this basic task that we have discussed. Okay, can you relate this to one of the tasks?
Convolution.
Convolution, very good. So if you do convolution, what happens?
Sliding window, sir, by sliding window technique.
Yeah, that's all fine. Then what happens? If you ideally do convolution of this and this, okay, what happens?
We'll get another picture where whenever the template matches the image, you'll have high intensity.
Right. So wherever the template matches the image, what will happen? High?
You'll have a high value of convolution.
Right. High values, convolution or correlation. Okay. So to put it in better words, we can here say it as a correlation. Because as you know, convolution is flip of correlation, or correlation is directly matching this template, okay, with at different locations in the image where this template, where the similar looking intensity distribution or variations are there. Okay, so if it is 10 cross 10, I will be keep watching it everywhere, and where it matches with high intensity or high correlation, high similarity, I say that is the best match. Fine. So, but can one of you tell what is the expression for correlation of two vectors? I need answer from someone who didn't attend MLIP. What is the expression for correlation of two vectors, X and Y, for example? I will anyway go into mathematics later, but I need quick answer. Yes.
Maybe dot product.
Dot product. Okay, dot product of two vectors X dot Y will give correlation. Fine, but in that, if the XY has different lengths or different ranges, then what happens? So X dot Y will give anyway different values at different locations, right? So here intensity is bright. So you mean to say that actually X dot Y, here it will be very high because these are all 255s. Okay, here it is black, assume that. Okay, then the X dot Y may not be high. So then correlation has to be high when there is a good match, right? So what should I find then? On the top of correlation, should I add something? Is my question clear?
We need to normalize things.
We have to normalize and then find correlation, right? So this is referred to as normalized cross correlation. Okay, so in words, it is referred to as normalized cross correlation. In mathematics, X dot Y by norm X norm Y. Okay, that is how we do. X is a instead of vector, now it is a matrix. Okay, so we can say this is 10 cross 10, I may have a 100 cross 1 vector, and I can also have 100 cross 1 vector at different each at 10 cross 10 patches. Fine, but is there any challenge in finding the best match through correlation? Need again some quick answers. If I just know only correlation and keep applying it, okay, is there any challenge I get in finding out the best correlation?
Sir, if the object size in target image is different.
Very good. So if the object size and target image are different, okay, so this is the query block. And that is one challenge. Okay, very good. Scale may be different. In that case, you won't find actually best match happening. So then what should we do then? See, this kind of understanding is very key for development of algorithms. Yeah, what should we do then? Quick answer, you can tell very intuitive answers. No, nothing, no mathematics or no domain knowledge is here.
So we have to slide query image of different sizes.
Yeah, you can make this query image. So if it is say 10 cross 10, I can range it from 6 cross 6 to say 15 cross 15. Okay, with say the scale 10 into 0.8, 10 into 0.9, 10 into 0.6, I can multiply like that, 10 into 1.1. Okay, like that I can make different sizes of the query images and keep convolving or keep correlating with each of the template images. So instead of one template image, I have now, okay, 20 template images. With if match occurs with any of them with high correlation, cross correlation, normalized cross correlation, I say it's a good match. Fine? Yes or no? Okay, so are there any other challenges?
So changes in orientation.
Changes in orientation. So then what should I do then? What should I do then?
You should change the query image block into different orientations.
Yeah, I will rotate or I will orient this query image block also into different orientations and try to find correlation. Fine. So assume that 360 degrees, at least 10 degrees, I make 36 more. Okay, orientation, that is it's different, or 180 at least. 180 orientations or 18 orientations I have taken. So 20 for scale and 18 for orientations. So how many template images now I have? How many template blocks? Again, we can't welcome.
20 into 18.
20 into 8. Okay, so that is 360. Fine, 360 blocks I have now. Fine. So is that enough, or should I also consider any more things? Any more things should I consider or not? Is that enough? Scale and orientation we have discussed. These are So in real situation, you are trying to catch my face. Okay, I am moving like this, okay, like this and so on. So what will you do? You can just make orientation scale, nothing else.
Intensity changes also.
Intensity changes also. Okay, so intensity changes, what do we do for that? So you can see here. Okay, so this is query block now. I want to find out. So intensity changes are also there. So what should I do now? What should we do? Some idea you should give, right?
Sir, can we do normalization to for this?
Intensities. Okay, very good. So normalization to all these can you do? That's the other question. So how do you do normalization to all? Because in each image, it may be different, right? See, if the template things are in my hand, or the query block is in my hand, or template block is in my hand, but the images are not in my hand. So I can't see if I resize the images, it doesn't mean that the object is resized to normal size. Because object, if I look at from close camera, it will be amplified and it will be bigger. If I look from far off camera, object will be smaller. The image dimensions I can normalize easily, but not the object dimensions. Is it correct or not? Similarly, rotations. I can orient the overall image to some direction, but not each individual objects in the image. Intensities, of course, yes. Okay. But object, will it appear always in same intensity is again a question. Okay, but at least I can normalize to some extent on the intensities. Okay, so assume that I somehow normalize into the intensities. Fine, is there any other limitations? Okay, I'm turning something like this. And we want
if the object is shown from a different angle.
Right, view variations. Those are referred to as view variations. Okay, it is seen from different views. Then I think it is again different. Okay, so you can't catch a head from the face images you have as templates. Okay, from side images you can't catch the front image. Is it fine or not? So this is again a challenge. Now tell me, what should we do? So we create another 20 more templates. 20 into all this. So my templates itself became few thousands. Then I need to search how many places. If I have actually a video, okay, each video may have 30 frames per second. Okay, in video I want to find out a particular face. Okay, then 1 minute video I have. Fine. How many frames will be there in 1 minute video? 30 frames per second. 1800 frames. In each frame, let it be say 512 cross 512 or 500 cross 500 for easy calculations. 500 cross 500. So this template, as we said, assume that it is say 10 cross 10. Okay. So at how many locations should I search for this template to catch the object? How many locations? The image is 500 cross 500. Ideally, how many locations? Quick answer is welcome. See, if I want to catch this face, at how many locations should I make template matching? Hope you are understanding the discussion, right? So I hope everyone understand about template matching and correlation. Okay, to find out the object of interest. Yes or no? No answer is more welcome now. If anybody says no, I will appreciate it. No, for my appreciation, don't say no. But if you have no, you can tell.
Sir, ideally we should search at all the places.
Yeah, we have to search ideally at all places. So how many places? That's the question. 500 cross 500 images. No, how many times I have to do this matching? Correlation. At this location I do, okay, match. At this location I do match. How many places?
So if you give step size of 1, then it is about 490 into 490 locations.
200, 500 into 500, let it be. Okay, just for easy calculations. So it is 25 into 10 power 4. Okay, so 2,50,000 times we have to match. Is it not? Each matching is how much computationally intensive? That means how many number of operations are needed in each of the multiplications and additions are needed in each of the correlation. So this is 10 cross 10. Okay. So at each location, how many operations are needed? How many operations
100
means how many multiplications and additions? Or roughly tell, I don't need exact figures.
100 multiplications.
100 multiplications and 100 additions. Okay. So now bringing together, so 100 operations at each location and 2.4 into 10 power 5. Okay. 2.5 into 10 power 5 into 100, 2.5 into 10 power 7. Okay. So that is 2.5 into 10 power 7, 25 million, right? So 20 to 25 million or 250 million. So I think 25 into 10 power 7 operations per image. And how many images are there to search and find out this query block?
1800 frames.
Okay, in 1 minute. So how much we should do? 1800 into this 10 power 7. Okay, 2.2. So another 10 power 4 you add. So it is 10 power 11 operations in 1 minute video to find out an object. Is this realistic? No, so we have hundreds of hours of data, not just even 1 minute, 100 minutes. Is it not? So how do I search now? You understand the problem? That much complex the problem is. Is this clear or not? Just I want to identify where a person is. Okay, in a video. For us human, just we will see and say that, oh, he is there. Right? So for a machine, these many operations are needed, but now we will try to see a simplified approach for doing it. Fine. So I can pose this as an object detection problem. Okay, in computer vision. Object detection means I want to detect where this object is. I somehow learn this all these variables and build a model. Okay, or develop an algorithm. And then say that this algorithm has the capability to recognize with various scales, various view variations, and various intensities, and this model is equipped enough to do all that. Then this model will only just look like a scanning RNI. Okay, and then just figure out wherever the object is and says fine. Okay, the learning happens in the background for all these variations, and then whenever during test time or during the processing or evaluation time, search time, it quickly sees. Okay, and tells. Fine. You understand the difference between a learning based method and a non-learning based method or not? Okay, correlation based method, there is no learning. You have been trying to match, okay, search in a crude sense. Fine. Whereas here you are trying to learn the variations of the object in the algorithm and use them to identify the object. Is this clear or not? So there can be other challenges like noise and so on. Is this clear? So if there are any questions you can ask, otherwise we can probably stop the class here. So any quick questions we can take, a couple of questions.
Sir, you just mentioned noise. So how can a learning model deal with noise?
Yeah, we add noise also to the template samples. Okay, while learning. And say that even in spite of noise, you recognize it as face itself, same object itself. So whatever you want to learn, you bring in the learning phase in the data. Okay, and then you say that this is same as that. But however, there may be again difficulties. Okay, so one class sample in some variation may be mixed with other class sample with different variation. Okay, that can happen. So that's why it is challenging. Even after we have a learning procedure to learning or procedure of learning mechanism. Any other questions? Okay, so what I would suggest is that again on the slides we will probably update you in the Google Classroom. So in the slides I will just go to the last slide once just to give you the references. So in the last slide, I have shown actually, last slide I have given the reference to Yeah, reference to the earlier video lectures. Okay, and as well as earlier Google Classroom. What I would recommend is you start looking at mathematical basics video lectures and also try to understand some of the aspects that we have discussed in this class to understand better. You start that process, and next Monday we will have an exam or a quiz, online quiz, either through Moodle or in Google Classroom for mathematics basics. Okay, so I will not discuss, as I said, fully. We will directly move on to the topics. Any other questions? If we have no questions, probably we can now conclude. Yeah, thanks to all and bye.